Always great to race with you, Chipper.
Always.
Another year in the books of swim running. Fewer events this year, but all memorable in their own way. And pretty excited for the future. Not just for the show, but for our own swimrun adventures.
Welcome to the Low Tide Boys, a Swimrun podcast. I'm Chip.
And I'm Chris, and this is episode 202 of the show. In this episode, we are going to be giving a race report for the last Odyssey Swimrun / first ÖTILLÖ USA Austin Pacebend Park.
Yeah. 2023.
Yeah.
The closing of one chapter and the opening of a new.
Yeah, for sure. But before we get into that, we mentioned this actually at the race, but just a huge heartfelt thank you to Lars, Aaron, Brent, John, the Chef of Swimrun, the Voice of Swimrun, all the volunteers throughout the years.
Yes.
From the beginning of when it was called Swimrun USA, to then Odyssey, to now ÖTILLÖ
USA.
It's ÖTILLÖ USA. I think it's like, the reason we're here is because they kept at it and didn't give up on it, and just want to give them a huge thank you for everything they've done for the sport.
Yeah, ditto on all that front, and the quality of the events that Odyssey put on, I think, is a true testament. Obviously, ÖTILLÖ saw the value in that, or saw the quality and the fact that Lars and the Odyssey team, everyone that you mentioned, and all the people behind the scenes that we didn't, they get it. They get what it's supposed to be. They've passed the vibe check time and time again, year after year. But a huge thank you. I know, speaking for you, Chris, Odyssey team has given us many great memories over the years, and we're not the only people. Everyone that I've talked to, I haven't heard anybody even produce an ill comment towards the Odyssey team.
And there's one thing you said, Chipper, on sort of passing the vibe check, which shameless plug for our most recent episode, which was a bonus live podcast recording with Dominic Liu of ÖTILLÖ and Lars Vananger of ÖTILLÖ USA, which should also have a YouTube video for that. But there was one thing that Dominic mentioned, which honestly I hadn't been able to stop thinking about since he mentioned it, was, he comes over here to see the Odyssey experience. And he said it's just like the way it is in Europe, which I think, if anything, that's such a huge testament to Lars, who essentially exported it from Sweden here and understood that the community and all that was such an important piece of this. And that's really sort of at the core of swimrun, is the community.
Yes.
And for Dominic, who's obviously, seen this firsthand in Europe, to come here and instantly recognize the same vibe, in many ways, that's the biggest testament to sort of the mission accomplishedness of what Odyssey was able to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And be sure, if you haven't seen that episode, bonus one, it's on our YouTube channel, video form, and then the podcast form. But if you're really curious, potentially concerned about or excited about what ÖTILLÖ and the Odyssey partnership mean going forward, I have been reflecting on that conversation as well, and I've heard it again once or twice, and it's like, I feel so happy and confident that everything seems to be going way in the right direction. And there, again, a couple threads that I heard come through there was the community piece about, how do we grow this? Yes, we want more races and we want it to grow, but how do we grow it and not have it turn into something that not a lot of people are into? How do we keep the vibe the same, the really great community spirit, the helping a friend out there enjoying the venture, and that's what Dominic and the ÖTILLÖ team want to do as well.
Yeah.
So if you like all those things about the Odyssey races or whatever other races, swim runs you've done, more of the same to come.
Yeah, and we've said this before, but it's if we like that vibe and we like the way the sport is going, it's really up to us, not just to continue to live by that vibe, which is being welcoming, friendly, make this thing as inclusive, as accessible, as diverse as possible, while trying to have as much fun as possible. But it's really on us to insist that that's what we want from our events, and that's what we want from our community. And I think if we see militant in this position is because at this point we've done over 15 swim runs, and that's just the best part. It's just the best part of it. So for us, it's really important to try to maintain that, and we know everyone who loves Swimrun loves that piece of it. So I think with that, make sure you check out our YouTube video if you want to see the video of that, or listen to the podcast. Incidentally, if you're listening to this, we also are doing a video for this as well. So if you want to watch us while we're talking to each other, just go to YouTube to check that out. Yeah, definitely. We're trying to do more on the video front, but let's get into it. Last you heard from the Low Tide boys, we were in a hotel room in Stockholm. Had just wrapped on ÖTILLÖ, the Swim World Championship, our second journey towards that. It was that episode and video. Go check those out. But we had a day out there. It was an experience. And do we want to talk about, I guess, from that point until sort of the start of this race? Sure. Yeah, why not? Well, I think last year, well, I would say last year, after ÖTILLÖ in 2022, I definitely fell off the training and the intensity, and I feel like I lost the juice a little bit. I was, I don't want to say broken's the right word, but I was tired. It was a big push, and I was just depleted, and it was hard for me to kind of get the juices flowing again for the last two races we had, or last race we had last year. Yeah, because we had Swimrun NC and Austin. Yeah. So I feel like Austin, I kind of got it back a little bit, but going into Austin's race this year, post ÖTILLÖ, I felt completely different than I did last year, which is I was happy that I'm kind of feeling it a little bit more. I still am. I want to train. I want to get in the pool. I want to get my workouts every day. I'm having fun with it. So I felt way fitter than I did if thinking comparatively year over year. But I would say, I would say if I can speak for your fitness, this is probably the fittest you've ever been at this race that we've done it. Yeah, and this is a good barometer. And if you're new to the Low Tide boys, the 2020 version of Austin, Odyssey Austin at the time, was a really pivotal moment in our trajectory of athletes, of our athletic quote unquote performance that we do. Is this race, it's felt like we kind of got into the Swimrun flow. We clicked. We had just started had a coach doing some structured training, and we were really starting to see the benefits of that, and that really changed the trajectory of us as athletes, I would say, if you can call us athletes. So this this race has always a interesting sort of check-in of okay, we can kind of compare it to previous years, but yeah, I would say that's probably fair in terms of the 3 times I've raced Odyssey or ÖTILLÖ Austin. I feel like this year I was the fittest that I have been. Yeah, no, I think that as you mentioned, I think this race really is a kind of good barometer, because Swimrun, Casco, the course kind of changes every year. We don't do the same races every year. This is really the one thing that's been a constant since we really kind of got really won on our Swimrun journey. Yeah, we did a couple races in 2018, but it really wasn't until 2020 where we really kind of picked it back up with the podcast and all that stuff, right? So yeah, this race is super fun. I think if you've listened to all our previous episodes, you'll remember that sort of that first year, I think our fitness was as mismatched as it had ever been in 2020. And then, started coming around 2021 where we had a great race. 2022 was even better. And I think this year, it's probably the closest that our fitness has been, at least on the swim and I think likely on the run as well. which allowed us to do a bunch of stuff, which we'll talk about. Which
Yeah.
we raced untethered, which we'll get into that in a little bit. But going back to your original point, I think last year you kind of fell off the wagon, and while we still had a couple races on there, it was hard for you to get up for that.
Yeah.
I think this year I experienced something similar. I was still training, so I think it's different in that respect, where I was still like forcing myself to kind of do the work. But I mean, I was like both physically but also like psychically injured, I think. Like I had some again, I'm not comparing this to anything serious at all, but definitely small PTSD.
Trauma. I mean, there was trauma.
Yeah, I was traumatized. I mean, I was in a lot of pain for a lot of that for the last, third of that race roughly. And it took me a while to get over it. I'm still kind of getting over it, to be honest. So I was doing the work, but I really just felt like I kind of lost like my mojo. Like I wasn't like getting any joy in any of the workouts, which is kind of like just a crappy place to be, and not a place I've been in recent memory.
I totally, and from my perspective, I could totally sense that in you. And I'm like, well, I don't know how to handle this because it's rare to see Chris in this sort of state, if you will. And I've known you for, let's just call it a decade.
At least, yeah.
And so that's something for me that I was like, okay. And then this year overall, holistically, has been we've been training much more independently. Your work's been more busy. Mine's been hectic. So our schedules aren't syncing up. So I think in between ÖTILLÖ and Austin, we maybe did like 3 workouts together or something. Like it wasn't a lot.
Yeah. Well, that coincided with a couple things. One was, training for ÖTILLÖ is just like a huge effort. And I was essentially, not really being helpful at home in the mornings. So after the race, I already committed and told my wife and kids that, I was going to basically be there when they wake up, which is around 7 for us, and just be there to make breakfast and be present instead of kind of just like rolling in at like 8, like stinky.
Yeah.
To be like, did everyone brush their teeth? All right, let's jump in the car. Okay, I'm dropping Rocky off. Like Susan's gonna drop off Javi. And I just like, for me, it was important. It's like, all right, this is a huge effort. One way I thought of putting it behind me was to just kind of refocus on my family, which is one of the obviously the thing that's most important, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of changed my availability for group workouts, but it also meant that I was just getting up super early to get the work in.
Yeah.
Which, I wouldn't wish that on anyone. And Chipper always has a past to not want to do a workout if it's at some sort of ungodly
I'm in
time.
from the majority of them, but some of them I am like, And the time change, it's colder, and it's like your A race is out of the way.
Yeah.
It's 5 o'clock in the morning. It's 40 degrees outside, and you got to go like run for an hour and a half. And you're like, well, I could just do it this afternoon.
Yeah, exactly.
So
and
I'll just do it this afternoon.
So I definitely was going into Austin. Plus, I would say the sort of talking like globally this year, it's kind of been a bummer. And Chipper, again, you mentioned this in passing, but I just couldn't stop thinking about it when we were in Austin. It's like, was it last year, every race we just brought the warm weather.
We just brought the
sunshine, California sunshine, wherever we went.
Just cut the California
we
kids
were just
were
like
showing up.
Farting rainbows. Like everything was great. And this year it's like races got canceled, crazy unseasonable fog, hurricanes. There was just a lot going on that made this year kind of a bummer, especially when we were doing all this training and taking ÖTILLÖ so seriously.
Yeah.
So there were just like a lot of negatives, but despite all that, heading to Austin is always something that's super positive. Again, we've done this. This would have been the 4th time we've done this race. We kind of have a routine. We barely need GPS anymore.
Yeah, almost know how to get there without Google Maps. Which is
for
really
the second year in a row.
Yeah.
Phil was with us, formerly of the Swimrun Monks. He's become a really good friend of ours, so it was great to spend some time with him, spend time with Andy and his new partner Mara. It was So Austin always delivers, and while I think personally my training hasn't been inspiring me or filling me with tons of joy, I was still happy to head to Pace Bend Park for sure.
And I definitely Austin, like, we take it very seriously, but it is also kind of like an end of the year, like it's fill the cups with happiness and with gratitude sort of race for us. Not like, can we really go destroy ourselves out there? I mean, if that's what's called upon us, if the race situation, we would do it. but like it's also like, let's go out there, let's have a good time, let's index more on the fun as opposed to indexing more on like, can we eke out everything and can we be on the red line all the time? But
which I think we're usually indexing on that. It's like let's not turn this into an ordeal. Let's have this be a fun experience.
Yeah.
And I think this race in particular, because we're pretty familiar with it now. I mean, it's still super twisty, and for some of those runs are like I feel like I'm running in circles.
Yeah.
But it's so familiar that it's just a really great time to be able to test things. So we did something new for this race, which we'll get into it. This is sort of second time foreshadowing this, but we raced without a tether, which I thought was a very interesting experience.
No paddle markings either.
No paddle markings. And we just kind of went with the flow. We were feeling pretty fit going in. Again, we didn't do a shakeout swim run before this one, so our last swim run was literally the World Championship. I think we did a couple of our tempo runs together just to kind of see where we're at.
Some fucking solid run workouts,
like a really
the
mile
repeats.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the workouts that we really try to prioritize getting together of like, where we'll finish and we're like, man, that kicked our ass. And then it's like, I wouldn't have done that by myself. And I wouldn't have done it to the level that I did it at because you were there.
And I will say too, I mean, we're lucky that we could train together as often as we want. But I think ones like those are also interesting from a sort of a race prep perspective, because I feel like when you're pushing effort and you got to hold like zone 3, zone 4, whatever it is, it also lets us know like where the other person's at, kind of thing. So it isn't like on race days like, oh man, I thought you were running 7s. So what's up with the 8s? It's like, no, we actually have done tempo runs together, so we kind of know how to calibrate effort for each other.
Yeah, we did our 6 by Z3 plus mile repeats,
and then
5 by, and then 1 zone 4 if I can give it the gas on that one.
Well,
anyway,
thanks, Coach.
Yeah. Anyway, let's get to it. So, getting to Austin, we get there. We left on Friday. Our flight left pretty early in the morning, so which is kind of good. We're moving a time zone over, so a 2-hour difference. So we're already waking up around sort of the time when we have to get up anyway. So it's just good practice to be in. They're uneventful.
Yeah, uneventful. Got this Airbnb, which apparently is where Team Cali Co-ed stayed last year. They're like, oh, we know where you are because we recognize the living room, which was a little creepy, but it's Mike and I love him, so it's totally cool. So we get to Austin and we're just kind of chilling. We hang out with California Swimrun, met up with Andy Hewitt and his new partner Mara, which is always great to spend time with Andy. I mean, he's a godfather.
Yep.
Name well deserved. They had an awesome race, incidentally. They won the mixed division, which is great.
Yep.
But I think getting there was sort of emotionally was really fun because it was just like, okay, here's our last little. I mean, all these races, honestly, it's sort of like a friend retreat. It's like, oh, here we go, we're going to camp again.
So totally. I mean, if you're a parent, you totally get this, but like it's basically a break. We're lucky enough, fortunate enough that our wives, shout out to episode 200 if you want to hear their take on things.
By the way, Susan knows how to swim.
We did have to. I handled a lot of that question, actually. Wow. I was like, I'm doing PR. So
she's not a strong swimmer, but she would not drown if she fell out of a boat.
Or did a cannonball.
Set the record straight.
Yeah. The record we have addended. We have put out a correction. But it is like, hey, it's we get to hang out for a couple days. We get to talk about swimrun with people who love swimrun. We love swimrun. We get to do cool things like we had set this live chat up with Dominic and Lars. We were stoked about that. It always fills us with so much gratitude to come here, and everyone's so nice, overly nice, and generous with us. It's just a great feel-good couple days, and how can you not be excited to like see that coming up on your calendar? Like, totally, yes, get to make it happen.
Speaking of super nice, can I just give a very special shout out to Emily St. Germain?
Yes.
She did her first swim run. She had a great race. She's stoked. She's hooked, which
She's
I told her.
stoked.
I knew was going to happen.
We knew this kind of stuff
It's almost
happens.
like if you listen to enough of our shows and you do a race, it's like, how can you not have
it's
a
a
good
self-fulfilling prophecy.
It got you so primed. It's like going to a comedy show. It's like you're there to laugh. You're already there to laugh. All you have to do is not bomb, kind of thing.
Amen.
Anyway, she gave us these beautiful artisanal presents
Yes.
to celebrate our 200th episode. So thank you so much, Emily. Like we're still. My wife was.
Actually, I need to pick mine up.
Yes, I got you.
And then she even gave our kids something.
Yeah,
which
very nice
ours
of her.
is growing right now.
Yeah, very, very nice of her. So thank you so much. So a little shout out there. But yeah. So then the next day, again, we were kind of taking it chill, pretty easy morning, and then we went to do our shakeout / on-vol clinic
thing. Yeah.
Clinic thing. So that happened at noon. It was pretty good turnout. I'd say maybe 60 people, something like that. It was cloudy. It would rain the day before.
Yes, so we got
Conditions
there.
were very interesting.
They got there, and the weather was cooler. And, you know, Texas, you're like, oh, I'm wearing shorts and a T-shirt the whole time. That's how it's definitely been the other years. This year, not so much. I'm like, I'm glad I brought my kind of bigger sweatshirt and some pants. I only brought the VIG Air, the sleeveless VIG, and then the regular one.
Vigs.
But the VIGs, both of them. But yeah, I wouldn't say I was worried about it because you said something. You're like, if you could do Casco and a VIG, you can do. I'm like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, honestly, I
little...
think I mentioned that to 4 people, and it got everyone it recalibrated everyone's like trepidation around the whole thing.
For sure.
So overcast, water level was lower, so it was actually pretty interesting to go check it out. The swimming was fine. Everything was fine about it. It just required maybe a little more climbing up in and out, maybe a little more elevation. But yeah, the climbing was fun. It was so the shakeout was good. I broke my rule of not wanting to get my shoes wet the day before, but also we hadn't really shaken anything out. And
I think it was good. I know we're not huge on doing we're not trying to do 2 hours a day before, even an hour, but I think 30 minutes, a little rust buster, especially the new stuff we were trying. It was a good okay, kind of put some things to
and I think
to rest.
This race in particular, there's a lot of muscle memory there, so you can probably get away with some stuff.
Definitely,
maybe being a little bit tired, but yeah. So we tested out the little mini tether that we brought, just in case we would need it. So it was good to just do that, kind of run through those motions, and then we went to have lunch, and then we recorded our live podcast, which. Shout out to everyone that showed up. I mean, we do these things. It's always like, is anyone going to show up? But we had an awesome crew of people there. People asked questions. It was really great to get Dominic and Lars on, and can't thank him enough. I think Dominic, he's been really great with us and really appreciates what we're trying to do. Yeah. And our interests are aligned. He wants to grow the sport for his reasons. We want to grow the sport for ours because we like doing it. They like putting them on, and it's a business, but doesn't mean that you can't have fun. So it was really great to chat with them. And then from there, so I should say, I honestly can't do the shout outs of everyone we meet anymore.
There's too many. I'm sorry.
It's too hard. It's too hard. And it's like, and honestly, where I'm at with it, and thank you everyone that came up. It's like, hey, when you were speaking to me, I was trying to be as present with you as possible and not thinking about, let me write this name down real quick so I can remember it 2 weeks later.
Here's the Chipper inner monologue is like, okay, I'm hitting this person's mouth. They're talking to me, but in my head, I'm like, what's their name? What's their name? Like, remember, okay, this is, and I'm like, I would rather listen to you and be engaged with you than try to remember what your name was. So
yes, just so we can shout it out. So blanket shout out to everyone that came up to us. I mean, it's always great. And
on the course, during packet pickup, before the race, during whatever, we appreciate it a lot. And awesome. It's nice to put a face to the name. Sometimes people are like, oh, I've been DMing you about them. I'm like, okay, yes, I remember now. Or I had 2 wetsuits out on loan, and they both came up to me at the start line. Like, hey, thanks for the wetsuit. I'm like, hey, I'm glad
you brought that up because I wanted to make sure to remember it, and I knew I was going to forget. But yeah, I mean, how funny was that? So foreshadowing to race day a little bit. We're waiting for the thing to start, and 2 guys come up to Chipper's like, hey man, thanks for the wetsuit loaner. And you're looking at these wetsuits like you don't even recognize them.
I'm like, is that mine?
Which is shout out to the Low Tide Boys gear loaner program, which is almost fully subscribed actually.
Yeah. And then after the podcast recording, which again, I know we say it and I'm sure people roll their eyes, but honestly, if we were like, well, Phil will be there since we drove him, so we know Phil will be there, and that could be it, which would be totally fine.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
our feelings are not hurt, and our expectations aren't, destroyed. But we had a decent turnout. It went longer than what we thought. We got questions from the audience, so again, a really great conversation with that. Some nice hints about where future races might be in the United States. So that was cool as well. But then after that, we sort of were like, okay, let's switch it to like race prep mode. Let's go get dinner.
Yeah. Went to dinner, then just went back to our Airbnb, hung out, like did gear checks, put stuff aside, try to go to sleep early. Luckily, we were staying like basically 5-7 minutes from race start, so that was pretty fun. It was super easy to just get in the car and go. I think we left our Airbnb at like 6:05 and got there, 6:15 at the latest. So that was good. Did a little shakeout before with California Swimrun crew and Emily.
Phil and Emily.
Emily, who was Phil's partner at the World Championship.
Yep.
She was racing solo. And then around 7 a.m.
And we didn't, and we hadn't really, I feel like for this race, we're sort of simpatico already. Like, we don't need to discuss what our approach is going to be. I think it felt like...
Well, I think the only thing that was different was the tether thing, but we had already discussed that. So it was like we kind of already had it settled how we were going to handle that change. And I think it was just like, let's just, as usual, kind of let the race come to us. We decide, we made the conscious decision that we weren't going to go ballistic in the first run.
We're going to let Phil go ballistic and Marcus,
let them go ballistic.
Jared Schumacher and Adrian. We're going to let those guys go ballistic.
Yeah, and as usual, we'll just try to be the best of the rest.
So I mean,
it's all about setting appropriate goals.
we were the national anthem went off, and a few minutes later we got started, and the first prac kind of shattered off, but I've been really happy with our first leg approach on don't be stupid, don't go blow your wad in the first, mile. It's almost a 2-mile run. There's no reason to get super sporty. We've done it before, and we just started out. We probably even went too fast to start, but it felt very
well, there weren't any open threats. I think in years past you were like, if you go sub 7 on this, I'm going to trip you myself. There was
no bounties.
It was just there was no we just kind of kept it chill. And and that first run is that first run's always good because it's just long enough to get you kind of like lathered up. So when that first swim comes, you have enough time to really kind of wrap your head around it.
That was something we noticed during our little warm-up run. We didn't even go. We went zone 2 for like 8 minutes, and we came back, and I was like, I had a good
little
good
lube,
heat
some
going.
Lube on.
So when we got out, and shout out to Gordo Byrne and his race with his son, who's 10, Axel, 10 or 12, one of those two. Great meeting you, Axel. It sounds like your dad didn't slow you down too much, but I know Axel and Gordo are going to ÖTILLÖ USA to kick the season off to race out there. So that was pretty cool.
By the way, I love that Gordo's getting back into swimrun in a big way.
It's the greatest thing ever. I'm here for it. We're trying to get Mr. Byrne back on the show as well.
Definitely
soon enough. But anyway, so that first run leading up to the swim, all very familiar. This is good. Okay, there's a big road. You can see everybody down. It kind of goes down, and you don't burn the legs up. Don't blow the quads up trying to sprint down this thing. We were running, and there was like 5 guys total, and they all had the Adidas shoes on.
And that's how conversation starters. When you told us they're on sale for $48, I was like, these are actually really good. I'm like, I told you.
Yep.
It was. Hey, anytime there's an opportunity to have a gear conversation during a race, I'm here for it.
And we did get. We're hopping all over the place, but we did get some great feedback about the gear talk. Someone came up and was like, I love when you go really deep on like paddles or something. And I'm like, well, that's at least one other person does, because we like this, but we're glad to hear that you like the crazy deep stuff as well. But anyway, back to the race. So the first swim, we weren't tethered. You didn't even have it out.
No, we had our plan.
We had our
plan. I mean, I tried to make sure that I was prepared. I think almost too far out. Like I was coming up like goggles, like I'm Batman or something.
I saw the pictures.
I was pretty far out because
you were locked
I wanted
and loaded.
to be ready to go because here's the thing. My only fear in this race was, can I keep up with Chipper's? Can I stay on Chipper's feet? That's basically my job.
And then my fear was like,
he can't.
Am I going to go too?
Yeah,
I get excited. I'm an excitable young boy.
We have the same fear. I know. We have the same fear. That's why we talked about it, which was just like, hey, I'm going to be hitting your feet, and then when I stop hitting your feet consistently or at some sort of regular interval,
take a look.
You know what's going on. So honestly, once the first one was the only one I thought was challenging, not being tethered, was because that's the only swim the entire day
a lot of traffic
where we had traffic.
Yeah.
Once we got through that first swim, again, it's as usual, it seems for us, we were just kind of in no man's land basically for the rest of the race. We started coming up on some back markers of the short course and things like that. But for a lot of the race, we were just kind of moving along by ourselves.
Yeah, and the swim continues, I think the last couple of years, and is a testament to the work that we've been putting in, continues to be a strength for us. Or at least it feels
Imagine
like
that.
at least in my head.
Imagine
but
that.
like we'll go in and we will catch up to teams. We'll just pass teams handily in the water. Some of that we'll give back on the run for sure. But like for me as a swim runner, I really like having the swim be kind of
and I'm gonna call you on that a little bit though.
Let's hear it.
Because no one really did catch us up on the run. There was one short course team, but once we identified they were short course, we're like, they got their own problems.
And then they went off.
Then they went off, and then we were like, in the first one, I think we passed maybe 5 or 6 teams and solo people, and we just never saw them again, except for that one short course team. And then
who said great swimming. We're like, well, thank you.
Oh,
great running.
Yeah.
Because you're passing us now, but see, you're turning right, we're going straight. So,
right.
But yeah, I mean, the runs. I think the swims actually were very manageable as usual. This race is a great. I don't want to say a first timers race, but there's not too many curveballs when it comes from a swim perspective. You're right on the coastline. Take as close a line as you want, and that's one thing that we really tried to do is like
or something, just swim the shore and stand up.
Yeah,
you're not too far.
So we took off on run 2, and this year we Lars and the team got access back to the Girl Scout camp area, so we kind of wiggled our way back through there. I felt like we were managing our efforts fine on that, like nothing was going crazy. We did hear and we did know there some of the swim exits and entrances were going to be a little sporty or a little bit more adventuresome with more climbing and descending there, which I thought added a really cool additional
it made it fun and honestly the water was so low that like and it's weird because coming every year has been lower.
Like, oh man!
And it's like, wow, now we're going below the boat ramp.
Yeah,
the boat ramp just doesn't even.
The
cut
boat ramp can't float anymore.
So that was cool, and I think, intentionally on my side of things because I always feel like I have too much pace for some of this stuff. I was letting you lead the runs. Just be like, you just set this any way you want it to go right here.
I appreciate that, and I wasn't sure if that was that reason, or you're like, I'll have Chipper take any branches that come my way first.
Well,
but I didn't know how it was, but I did like that because I did feel, and on the inverse of that a little bit, the first run or the second run's like 2 miles, and then the second swim is actually it's at least a K.
Yeah, it's pretty long.
And I remember thinking like, damn, did I miss something? And because my goggle was also full of water that time my left.
Is that better or worse for you than foggy goggle?
I'd rather have water in one goggle than foggy goggles.
Okay, interesting.
Because at least I could see.
Interesting. Okay.
And I also started. I don't know if was drink too much water, but I was like starting to get a little, like, I don't want to vom
while swimming.
Yeah, while swimming. I was also really jamming nutrition down. Like I went to hit 90 grams per hour Precision Fuel and Hydration, I had the caffeine 30 before. We were on the protocol, so I don't know if it was like, because in the training, our 2-hour trail runs, I've been doing more 60 because that works for me. But the 90 for the race, so I don't know if it's like I wasn't quite ready for it, or is that combination with some of the guzzling some water down or whatever the situation is.
Just
but
the effort. Yeah. It's hard to say. Well, I'm glad that went away and that you didn't.
I still fueled because I was like, we got 2 hours left. I can't not take anything. So I started still added on water and it did go away. But I lowered my intake to more like 60.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I did 90 the first hour and then did 60 just for the because it just kind of worked out that way with aid stations and stuff. I mean, I was trying to be mindful of it, but I wasn't like every 20 just trying to be nuts on it because, like, again, I felt like I'm so familiar with that race. And I also had a plan to take a caffeine gel, caffeine gel for me later on where I took 20 milligrams. And that was enough. That was essentially for like the last hour and 10 minutes, which was plenty enough. Just with a little gel here and there, that was enough for me.
So I did like leading the runs. Like, hopefully it wasn't too boring or too slow or whatever back there. Like, I felt like, okay, this is, in my head, I'm like, okay, this is Z3 plus type work. Here's what I'm going to do. And it really helped me manage my own situation, which is good because, like, I guess leading the swims, I'm outputting a little bit more than probably you in the back, and then to go right into chasing Chris on the run is like,
right, yeah.
My heart rate's not ever
right. It's like, hey, thanks for giving me a break in your draft, and now follow.
Now I'm gonna go fucking light it up. So I did like that, and that worked for us. And then we had the out and back run 3. Is that or run 4?
Run 4.
Anyway, whatever the 3.2,
run
4K run, 3.25 mile run is, that you go out and back. That's always a great spot. One, to see people. Always a good spot to see, like, hey, who are you?
Us,
who's near us? Yeah. What's the situation like?
And for us, again, we didn't see anyone. We had some awesome volunteers that were going around the course cheering people on, which was great. And so at some point, someone told us that we were the second team. And for us, it's like, that's good information because we don't know anything that's going on right now. And honestly, and this is the same thing the last couple years, like we only were able to get a kind of a sense of whether we'd consolidated second place or where we were at on that out and back section, because that's when we would hopefully see people. Yeah,
and so we were thinking, well, we knew Phil was ahead. We knew Adrian was there. We knew Marcus and Jared was going to be there. We knew Emily was in front as well. And we're like, we might see all of them, none of them, some of them on this out and back. And the only person we ended up seeing was Emily. So we're like, okay, everyone else is out at least a mile ahead of us. So,
I mean, we saw other people. We just didn't know they were after that.
And then, when we're turning around, then that's kind of a good gauge, like, when's the next men's team that we see? Not that we're racing anybody or racing for whatever, but if second place is there, we're not going to like.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a race, and we're still trying to have fun. But that fun can also
come with some hardware.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point is to do the best you can, and honestly, for me, when there's people out there, it helps me do better because get a carrot to chase and stuff like that. So,
and then so we were doing good. I mean, I thought everything was going fine. We didn't have any gear snafus. Everything was pretty smooth.
Everything was working. I was feeling pretty strong. I definitely felt like I had pace in hand, and that might have been as a result of you leading like the early runs, just kind of setting your thing. So, but I definitely felt like I had pace. And it was after when we're sort of heading back home where I sort of just naturally just like, well, let me assert this a little bit and let's sort of like turn the wick up a little bit.
Yes. So I also remember a conversation where you're like, oh, maybe we, I forgot the exact words, but it was like, oh, maybe we could dial it back a little bit. I'm like, yeah, sounds good. And then the next thing I know, Chris is off the front, like going, and I'm like, huffing and puffing more. I'm like, okay, maybe he didn't hear what he said.
Well, okay, well, we definitely had some communication breakdowns, so I'm glad we're processing this on our podcast. I asked, what I remember asking was, do you need me to dial it back? and you saying no. So I was like, oh, okay.
Wow. Okay.
I was like, you want me to dial it back? And you were like, you're good, or no, it's fine, or something. So I was like, well, okay, I guess that means that
that means you can go.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you did the right thing for what you heard, and I was like, what's Chris doing?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I did, and this is one part that I was a little concerned on the tether, and I would say overall, racing without a tether for this race worked out very well for us.
Yeah.
It's certainly doable again, and I think we'll probably explore racing without a tether for future races. But my concerns were getting away on the swim, and then on the run, it's really useful for me to not have to verbally open my mouth and say something to you about how, how it's hurting.
Yeah.
So those
Fair
are my
enough.
things.
Fair
So
enough.
when you were ahead, I did have to go, hey, bring it back a click or a half a click or whatever to you. But you also have your earplugs in and stuff. So I think
Well,
I
took
oh, okay.
one out, so I could
So
make sure
those were my concerns. It kind of, it didn't like ever blow up to be this huge thing where I
No.
like, oh, I'm going to blow up.
No, it wasn't an issue. I think
Yeah.
like the couple times where I noticed you kind of a little more behind, I would just like slow up or whatever.
Yeah.
So I mean, I also was like, it's the most important thing in all this stuff is having fun, and
Yeah.
me destroying you for no reason is not what I would consider fun. Like,
diabolical.
we weren't racing against anyone. We don't know who was we kind of knew who was in front of us. We don't know
Yeah.
who was behind us. We were just there in our thing, doing our thing, having fun, climbing, doing like
Rock
just
climbing
doing
and
this like
shit.
random ass activity,
Yeah.
which we love doing and we think everyone should try it. So it was like at some point it's like, okay, you know what, my love for you is one of my best friends, and having fun here is more important than like, oh, let me extract like 20 seconds
Yeah.
per mile pace for what? Like
Yeah.
it's just not important. So, but it's still like I wanted to feel racy, right? So it's like, well,
Yeah,
let's,
I'm
let's,
not trying
let's
to
see what we got. Exactly.
phone it in.
It's a fine line between
Yeah.
like, not doing anything just ridiculous, but also like, oh, let's just move through nature, because moving through nature quickly is fun, and swim running when you just run down, jump in the water
Yeah.
is super fun.
Yeah.
And that so that run, let's see, run 5,
The run to
where the cliff jump used to be.
yeah.
That run was super interesting because the shout out again to ÖTILLÖ USA, Courtney, who was running social
Yes.
for
from the We Do team.
from the We Do team. She did an awesome job. At some point, they were in Lars's truck, and they saw us come out, and the truck was running next to us at like, I don't know, 5 miles an hour or whatever race we were going at,
Idling.
6 miles an hour. And I kind of saw they were following us, but I don't know what was going on. You told me that you kind of peeked and you saw that they were recording video.
that the exit out of that to get to that half-mile run where the cliff jump one is
Legit
a legit rock scramble up there, which was fun. And that, I will say, from a non-tether perspective, you took a little bit of a different line. We both made it to the top with very close to each other. But I think non-tethered, that was helpful.
Also, another thing on the non-tethered, like when we were getting close to shore, I would sort of just swing around to the side of you. So we're actually getting out of the water usually at around the same time. It wasn't like you get out, take a few steps, and I'm getting out.
There was no
lag.
There was no discrepancy on entrances or exits, I would say, without the tether, because we're still like, I'm not just going to go shooting in there 10 out of 10 and just like ditch Chris while he is like, oh, he had an issue with his pull or whatever, I'm waiting for him still.
Yeah, there's a
just
verification process.
Yeah, like, hey, you ready to go? Yeah. So we were scrambling up out of there, and I saw Lars, Dominic, and the social and the video team pull up, and Lars is like, big Texas black truck. And I was like, oh, cool. You're like, oh, I always like to have a good video. Selfishly, that stuff's cool. And
Yes, it was cool.
And then so we ran off, and they didn't get out, or they didn't. I'm like, oh man, we missed it. And then we started running, and it's just a half mile. And then I saw on my peripheral they were going really slow, and I saw them hanging out the window with like the good baller camera with the thing. I'm like, oh yeah, this is gonna be sick. And
Yeah,
sure
and so
enough, it ended up.
I mean, I knew they were pacing us, but I just thought they were just like,
Yeah.
oh, watch these swim runners go. I had no idea they were recording. So that run is always fun because you're kind of just peeling it around this sort of like campground picnic table thing.
Yeah.
And you just run by this cliff. And I actually looked over the cliff, like you were a little bit inside, but I want to see what it looks like
For
off
the
the
cliff
cliff.
jump, yeah.
And where you would jump in the water, there were just more rocks
Ground,
down
yeah.
there. It was like, damn. So that was, but yeah, so we do that basically the second to last swim. And that's where we started seeing some of the back markers on the short course.
Yep.
So that was fun. I mean, instantly it was like, it just felt like we were going faster because we were passing people and there was just like a little bit of a carrot. So yeah, we do that second to last swim and then run up to the aid station. And I think there is where it's like, okay, this is a run where I usually lead and I usually try to get us.
And that's what happened.
Get us to the last run or get us to the last swim.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's what we did. We saw some friends along the way. They were doing the short course and past some of the solo teams, and we could start hearing it. Hear the voice of Swimrun.
Is that the voice of Swimrun?
I think we're getting closer, but it also feels like we're running in circles.
Yeah, and then it'd be like, oh, we're headed towards the noise, and then it'd be like, psych, here's a complete. We're taking you the other way, and it's like, okay, I guess we're winding
It's
around
like,
some
how
more.
are we taking 5 lefts?
I'm
now?
like, we're not at the road yet. Like, can we get to the road, please? But yeah, it was good. We got to the road, and there's been times where I've been on that road, and I've been I've been on the red line for sure, but it was still overcast.
Yeah,
it was cool. I think we've had our best. Not that that's the biggest hill ever, but it's a hill at the race. Like we had I was right there, and I know you weren't going, balls to the wall or anything, but I was right. Like we were there, and then of course like left. Don't forget the left because one time you made
I blatantly missed a left.
It happened, we've all
but
taken
again,
long turns.
last year there was a bunch of teams that we were sort of running with. This year there was just nobody, so we were just kind of like, okay, let's move forward so we can get this thing done. At that point, I think we were getting close to 3 hours. I think we're like 2 hours and 55 or something like that. So it's like, hey, you know what? Like, there's still some ego around this.
Let's go for it.
Let's see if we can put a good time. We've been feeling strong all day. Hit that last aid station real quick. At that point, at that station, we hear Marcus Barton and Jared Shoemaker winning.
Yeah, so
they just won. And we're like, damn, we still have a swim to go.
Then we turned around and Adrian was there, already done with the race. And he's like,
yeah.
oh, yeah, good job, guys. And we're like, okay.
We're like running away. Did you win?
We're like, did you win? How'd it go? And then we went all the way down the stairs, and that's a spot where you used to get on the kind of floating dock and jump off, but that was not happening. So you kind of made your way along, and we just jumped in
and that was the only time in the whole race. And honestly, I guess it's a good thing that that's all that happened. But where there was one hiccup with the tether, or not having a tether. So my earplug fell out because I think I was just like trying to get in real quick and just didn't make sure it was sealed. It fell out, and I'm like, I'm just going to keep swimming. But instantly, like,
disoriented.
If you know what if you have my issue, you know exactly what happened. Your ear got super cold, started getting disoriented. So I can't swim and put that thing in. So I basically like take a couple strong strokes, tap Chipper on the foot like a whole bunch of times, and
that's our signal for like something. Like something's up.
So I tap his foot a bunch of times. You look back. And I'm like, hey, hold on a sec. My ear. And while I'm saying that,
you just saw me turn around and
start swimming. Turn around and start swimming again. So I'm like, oh, fuck, you didn't hear me. So I'm like, Chipper. I'm like, he's not listening. Okay, so then I put the thing in, and then I basically had to do like a 200, 300 yard to get back
surge.
To get back in contact.
Here's my POV on that. Was earlier in the race we had talked about, because we would get in, and I feel, I'm not the... I feel like I take a pretty decent line. Like, I don't need to swim out an extra 50 yards for no reason. Like, just swim.
Swim straight.
So trying to take
tight,
a good line, and you had said, oh, make sure you take a tight line. I'm like, okay. So I thought the tapping was... I looked up, I'm like, okay, I could get a little closer, so maybe I will. And then that's what I thought it was. I didn't hear any words. And then I was going, and I'm like... And I would kind of take like a couple strokes, and then I would kind of like do over my shoulder, and I saw you were back there like 25, 30 yards. I'm like, oh shit, okay. I'm like, maybe I was cruising and I like didn't even realize it.
No, so it's fine.
So I just, I just kind of let off the gas a little bit and then made sure you were there. And then,
yeah, I mean, at some point I caught up. And again,
yeah.
like, if we were doing some sort of major ocean crossing, it probably would have been a little bit more annoying. But for this, it was just like, all right, let me just it's like, I need to catch, it's my responsibility. I need to catch up. It was my gear error. So I basically put the earplug back in, and then just like, all right, let's go. And then just probably was swimming at, 90% or something like that at that level, just to get back in contact.
Spike
which
the
was
heart rate.
fine. And again, being in the back, I definitely, if you're gonna blow out your shoulders, might as well do it on the last swim. Just go for it.
Yeah,
so caught up. Again, it took me a while. Like I also didn't want to totally blow up, so I was like, okay, let me just slowly make. I knew I was making progress, so I figured at some point you'd
I realized you were
there. Because you're already faster than me, so it's totally possible that you would have been like 50 yards. You would just move forward like you're 50 yards ahead the whole time. But yeah, at some point.
Yeah.
But that was really, to think that was the only kind of hiccup in the non-tether thing. It's not bad.
Yeah. So it's the no tether thing for me. I guess it was a little bit more mental. It was one more thing to pay attention to, like take 10, 15, 20 strokes. Okay, I haven't felt crit. Like, is he back there? And I kind of got to look. It's like one more thing to do when you're leading that. And same with the run. Like, oh, it's one more thing for me to shout up and say, like, hey, can you slow down or whatever? But yeah, it was a good lesson. And we learned that we don't have to be 100% reliant on it. That we can go a whole race or a few legs, or we know, hey, at Casco, when you're crossing the Portland Sound, let's throw it on.
I mean, we're kind of jumping into final thoughts, but yeah, no, but I would say as to that, what I would say as to that is I think a lot of it has to do with our level of fitness. I think if our fitness is pretty similar, racing without a tether to me seems more freeing. But if I was really, if I didn't feel, if I wasn't just 4 seconds per 100 on average slower than you, if it was like 20 seconds, then I could see that being a little bit tougher.
Yeah, that's a discrepancy.
Same thing on the run. Like, I mean, the run is, you just got to slow down or speed up. Yeah, having the tether is great for that sort of that haptic feedback, but I don't think that again, because our runs were pretty similar. And as we mentioned in the beginning, it's like I felt like our fitness was as closely aligned for this race as maybe ever. Maybe Casco a couple years ago, we were pretty aligned there too. But yeah, anyway, I actually liked it, but maybe that's just as the person who's usually in the back on the swims. Like for me, it was just nice just to like keep up. And honestly, that's how we've been training most of the year. So it
has been, yeah. So we back to the last run leg, we got out. That was a scramble, and that's where we had done the shakeout before. So we kind of took a look at a couple lines and tested it out, and we knew what we were looking for there, and we handled it.
Yep.
Ran in second place, men's long course team.
Yep. Final stats were, hold on a second here.
Yep.
3 hours, 7 minutes, and 51 seconds, which was good enough for second place men's team and second overall team. Yeah.
Well, good on us. Second year being second.
Third year being second.
Yeah.
We've gotten second.
21, 20.
Yeah. In 2021, we got second because a lot of folks were doing Swimrun NC, which was rescheduled for that same day. So if you wanted ÖTILLÖ merit points, you had to go there.
Yeah.
But we were already committed to Austin. We're happy to go do that. Yeah. Then the next year, probably legit second place, I'd say. A little bit more of a legit second place. And then this one, I wouldn't say that it was super competitive. But behind us, it started getting pretty close. So I think we're maybe like 6 minutes or 8 minutes before the third place team or something like that.
I mean, you can only race who shows up. And we can't help it if we love doing Austin and we show up for the last.
And it's not because we're not telling people to go.
Yeah,
we're telling people to go. So if you're not showing up, that's
the truth.
You're not showing up and beating us, that's on you.
And then we hung out for a little bit, got changed, hug some folks, kiss some babies, that sort of thing. Chatted with the Voice of Swimrun.
Yeah. Speaking of babies, wasn't it so great to see Fanny Coon?
And her baby, yes.
And her baby.
That was really cool. Fanny came out. She's now
Miami.
And lives in Miami. So she came out, won the short course female team division with her partner, who
forgetting
is
her name, but she's from Estonia.
She's from Estonia. She's an animal. I mean this in the most positive. Like, she is a beast.
I'll give you. Well, if you
Guinness Book World Record holder.
Let me tell you for what. One of the things she has a world record for is she's been in the Olympics. She has a world record for the fastest 50-kilometer swim wearing a monofin.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like looking at her Instagram, like whoa, this is wild. So obviously, really cool, and a lot of people at the finish line, they got they get it. Vibe check passed. They caught the bug. All that good stuff. They were feeling it. Smiles were happening. The Chef of Swimrun, Lars's mom,
taking care of everybody.
She must have been cooking for a week straight from Austin. So thank you for that. Just the biggest spread of food after ever. I saw Dominic. He probably had at least 5 or 6 brownies that he told me about. I don't know what he didn't tell me about, but he's getting used to the American diet here soon enough. But we had a great time. Jammed back to the Airbnb, got showered, packed up, and then went home.
Yep, not before getting some awesome ramen at some random place, some hipster ramen place. But yeah, I guess final thoughts. Always great to race with you, Chipper.
Always.
Another year in the books of swim running. Fewer events this year, but all memorable in their own way. And pretty excited for the future. Not just for the show, but for our own swim run adventures.
Absolutely, yeah. And we sort of hashed the tether stuff already, but yeah, I mean, again, always a great weekend or great time frame hanging out with the community, obviously with you. It's just like we're super fortunate. We feel very grateful, both of us, that we get to do this on a regular basis and that it brings them joy and at least entertainment. We have been people have told us it's at least entertaining, so we can hang our hats on that one. But really looking forward to next year. We honestly, people have been asking us, "Oh, what are you doing? This and that." Like, we haven't even talked about it yet. The one thing that we're sort of putting out there is family Low Tide Boyz European vacation, which includes ÖTILLÖ USA.
Yep, either at the beginning or at the end. Maybe
probably
at the beginning. Just get it over with.
Just get it. Yeah, get it done with.
And then eating a bunch of chocolate while wearing watches and whatnot.
And then we don't know any more than anybody else. We are excited about the new race in the United States. We would be very excited to do new swim runs in the United States.
Yeah, we'll see what it is.
We have many existing swim runs that we want to do. I mean, the bucket list floweth over as always. So I mean, we don't know. We have to hash it out. But yeah.
Yeah. Stay tuned. Stay tuned for that. We'll definitely
once we figure it out,
make some decisions.
We'll tell you.
And,
we'll tell you
for Engadin, I'm already trying to get Team Cali co-ed. I was like, hey guys, you want to take a European vacation? So maybe we'll try to see if we can get a huge contingent of people to go out for that race, which would be super fun.
That would be great.
But yeah, again, thanks everyone who listens to the show, came up to us. It means the world to us. It really does. And we're just always shocked that I was telling one lady, it feels like for this show it's a labor of love, and usually we kind of just feel like we're shouting into the void, and to have that signal be received by someone and have them appreciate it is it's just really great, really special.
Yeah. Again, really grateful, appreciative, love the DMs, the emails, the comments, the in-persons, the whatevers on the race course. Like, all of it is just really fuel to keep us going. And these races are like injections into the arm of like, okay, like, let's get it. Let's charge it up again. And it's always so great. And again, big so excited about the future of Swimrun in the U.S. with
Yeah.
the ÖTILLÖ USA series.
I guess the last thing, and if you're sitting at home and you're like, man, I'm really this episode just got me super pumped up. I want to sign up for a race. Go on Google, find the swim run that's happening closest to your house. If it's a local event, go support it. We need to have these local events, so the more people show up and do their local swim runs, there aren't that many, but we got to support them. That's the only way this thing's going to grow. It's great that ÖTILLÖ USA is going to have a bunch of events and all that stuff, especially for folks that want to go on a Swimrun World Championship journey, which it's an experience we'd recommend, but that's not the only way to experience swimrun. And going to Lake James in a random part of North Carolina to do a really cool race, or going to Swimrun NC to do another random part of North Carolina to do a really cool race, or
Bellingham,
Folsom,
Cape Cod,
Knoxville. There's a lot of races out there. So if you're listening to this and you're stoked, find a race to sign up for, and let us know if you did.
And tell them who sent you.
Hell
sure.
yeah.
But I guess we'll see you out there in 2024.
We did it.
Over and out. That's it for this week's episode. Thanks so much for listening to the show. Make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and leave a rating or review, since that's the best way to help other people discover the show and the sport of swimrun.
Check out our website, lowtideboys.com. That's boys with a Z, for swimrun resources, including gear guides, tips, how-to videos, and so much more. Make sure to check out our meme page at The Low Tide Boys on Instagram. If you have any questions or suggestions for the show, send us a DM or email us at lowtideboys@gmail.com.
We'd like to thank Riding Easy Records for our show music, and of course our wives for their support and tolerance of our swimrun and other activities.
Lots of activities.
Lots of activities.
Finally, you can support our efforts on Patreon. Until next time, get out there and go for a swim.
Then a run.
And then a swim.
Then another run.
Then another swim.
Then run some more.
Just keep going.
Let's go.
And then stop at some point because,
And fuel. Don't forget to fuel.
Gotta fuel
Of
too.
course, yes.